things you can do. What makes good habitat? Let's talk about that. Multiple zone cover. So when you're at your house trying to garden for wildlife, to bring more wildlife in, and we're mostly talking about beneficial insects and birds, multiple cover zones are a great idea, a great thought to look at. So that's like varying shrubs, different sizes, a tree or two, and then some low open areas as well. Areas for reproduction and raising young. Again, well-covered areas for birds are very important. Living in an urban environment, they want to sort of hide and be able to take care of business, and we need to provide that space for them. Year-round food supply, that's pretty easily done without putting out bird feeders. I don't have a bird feeder anymore because I have so many native plants that I have birds all year round. And they're feasting on various things throughout the year. Freshwater source is really important in the valley. If you live near a creek, you're doing pretty good. You'll get more wildlife. There's areas along Guadalupe Creek, Los Gatos Creek that have quite a bit of habitat. But if you can provide fresh water in your garden, that's a big deal. And this is a pretty big deal too. Limited use of garden chemicals, and especially pesticides, because insects that you don't intend to harm are being harmed when you use pesticides.
What about fertilizers?
Fertilizers are not quite as harmful, except for the buildup of salts, and also the manufacturing of some of the chemical fertilizers is a little bit rough. So I do tend to use exclusively organic fertilizers. But the good thing about most natives is they've adapted to not needing much in the way of fertilizer or pesticide.
So compost is okay?
Compost is great, yeah. Yeah.
When you say fresh water, you mean untreated water?
Fresh, untreated water, just available water. You don't want to have a pond full of mosquitoes necessarily, although that might be good habitat for somebody. But probably the county would frown upon it. So you'd want to either be changing out water or have a water feature that recycles water through. Like it has a little pool, maybe a little fountain. Again, it's not all
potable water for wildlife.
Yeah, it's not always practical, but they love. Of course, they need to drink it and they need to take baths, and a lot of insects depend on it too. You had a question?
Water supply.
Same question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Fresh water is pretty important to have around, but again, sometimes it's not practical to do that. So you do the best you can. The seasonal water might be good when it's the dry season to put out a dish. Let them have that.
What do you recommend to keep away mosquitoes out of the fresh water?
So I would, if you're going to have water that's not circulated, you'll have to probably watch that real carefully, especially during this season right now, when they're tending to lay eggs, and dump it out. You can use things like mosquito fish, but if they escape into the creeks, it's not such a great thing, because they also eat damselfly larvae. You want to have good insects around. Mosquitoes are bad because they bite us and they have disease. They're good forage, though, for a lot of creatures. But I would recommend, just because of the society we're living in and all close here, that you would watch a still water source for larvae and dump it out occasionally, maybe once a week or so, especially in this time when they're laying eggs. So this is kind of an example of what I was talking about. This is my yard, actually, in a pretty good year. We have sort of varying levels of a low area here, and shrubs back there, and shrub over here. There's a water source over here. So it just gives you an idea of what it can look like. And of course, it doesn't have to be ugly looking. We want our yards to look nice.
What animals do you have?
Well, I live in the hills, so I started with that benefit. I've seen tons of animals. I see so many butterflies, it's not even funny. At the right time of year, I'll have 4 or 5 species foraging every day of butterflies. And then I see a lot of different bees, too. A lot of different, European honeybee we see around, but I see lots of smaller bees that are native bees, and they're really neat looking. they're very busy up there. And then bumblebees as well. I have a huge bird list. I've seen skunks and raccoons and bobcats, coyote.
Any deer?
Plenty of deer. Lots of deer. Oh, yeah.
Do they eat most of your stuff?
Well, that's a whole other topic, is deer resistant. But I've gone towards deer resistant stuff, and sometimes I get hurt. Sometimes they'll say thank you very much, but for the most part, they leave me alone. And that's a whole other topic, because there's a bunch of different ways to do that. But yeah, it's kind of a careful what you wish for. Yay, I have wildlife. Oh, they ate my plants. So which plants work best in California? With all I'm saying, it should not be a surprise to you that I'm going to recommend California natives, because they've co-evolved with our various insects and birds. They grew up together. They have sort of done Darwin's thing when it comes to sorting things out. There's very specific pollinators for each of these, and we don't even really know a fraction of them. We're learning more and more, but we don't really know who pollinates what entirely. It's still a mystery. But we do know they are attracted to what they grew up with. By the way, any bumblebee you see is a native bee. All the bumblebees, all the bombus are native. The only really non-native bee we have is the European honeybee.
Is the carpenter bee native?
Yeah.
Is there more than one that has that yellow around the head?
Well, that's usually pollen. I'm not a bee expert, so I don't really know all the various bees.
I think she's asking, there's several species of bumblebees.
Yeah, there's a many.
Okay.
There's handfuls of bumblebees that can be
So
around.
I see a black one with yellow around its head.
Yeah,
Could be.
Yeah,
that's sort of the standard look to
They
it.
really like poppies.
I think
Yeah,
locally
yeah.
we have about a half a dozen species of bumblebees.
That sounds about right.
Black and yellow in different patterns.
Right. So starting from the larger things, we're just going to go through some of the plants that I would recommend for increasing habitat in your yard. So plant an oak, plant a habitat, yes. But I understand and I appreciate that some people have trees already in their yards and they're not taking them down. And that's one of the first questions I get is, do I have to take out that camphor tree? No, unless you want to. Because trees provide habitat, period. Native trees are better. But taking out a whole tree, unless you really want to do that, it's not necessary. But oaks are incredibly good providers of habitat. They're just incredible. Insect species with oaks, they really go together. There's a whole world up there that you have no idea about. And I don't think humans have any idea about most of it. We've studied some. We've taken little bits and pieces and studied some of it. 100 species of birds use oaks in California. I think that's at least that many.
I have a large oak that was a volunteer, and I don't see lots of birds in it, and I don't understand why.
I don't understand why either. It's hard to comment on any specific property necessarily, other than I usually see oak trees being very busy.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been professionally pruned?
Yes.
Well, there's your answer. Professional pruners, a lot of times, they open the tree up so much. The birds are going to be much more numerous in a tree that's not been opened up totally. Give it a few years to recover from the professional pruning. And
Yeah, that makes sense.
You'll see more birds. But once they open it up so much that there's not much cover anymore. And you get a lot more birds in an unpruned tree.
Okay.
And maybe amphibians too, like arboreal salamander. You never know. If you live off near the hills, you may see a salamander that never really reaches the ground, the arboreal salamander. But there's a lot of reptiles and various amphibians, tree frogs and such that use them.
Actually, I see the so-called arboreal salamander, also known as the oak salamander, is very common in suburban yards.
Is it really?
Even
That's
where
great.
there are no trees. It's a very adaptable species.
Huh. most indigenous mammals use or used oaks, including the indigenous humans here, of course. And there really is nearly an oak for nearly every situation. If you're thinking of planting a tree, I would encourage an oak. And when in the valley, that's the one. This is actually the tallest oak, not this particular one. This is in Vacaville at a playground, obviously. But this is probably a 400-year-old oak, a valley oak. It's the tallest species of oak in the world. We have it right here in California. And it's a beauty. It's actually an oak. So a lot of people hear, oh, you don't want to water your oaks. This one you can water. You can make it grow real big, real fast. Steve was just talking earlier before the program here. He's got one that's, 7 years old and 20 plus feet?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a little more like 10 now,
And
but it's,
the reason you can put this one actually near Lexington Reservoir survives with inundation. I've seen them completely inundated, and they're 40, 50 years old, so they've been there a while. The reservoir's been there a very long while. They can live underwater, so that's how much you can water this oak.